I went to the restroom and I didn't make it back to the table. On my way back, I literally fell over dead. There's no warning, no symptoms, nothing at all to indicate there was anything wrong with me or anything like this might happen. In the months afterwards were clear and obvious signs of PTSD, which I didn't recognize at the time. On day 6, I was reading emails. Day 7, I was attending calls, and within no time I was working at full capacity. I was my own worst enemy. My boss, a few months before then, had said, "Hey Chris, I think you need to take an extended time out." I didn't know how I was going to pay for the house. I didn't know how I was going to maintain my commitments to my family.
For anyone out there that's going through their own Careerquake and reinvention journey, what would you say to them? Welcome to Raw with Uma. I am in Sydney and we are at this beautiful park, and I met with my ex-colleague and he has such a powerful story to tell. So here we are. Chris, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And I want you to take us to the day when your heart stopped for 6 minutes.
Okay, all right. It was the 1st of May, 2021, and my wife and I and my 2 daughters, we just moved into a new house, took the big mortgage. I just got a new job, most sort of senior executive role that I'd held. So there's a lot of pressure, and we just moved in. And on that particular day, as in almost any marriage, Louise and I had a disagreement. She was doing her thing in the back of the house. I was sitting in the front of the house. And I thought it was time for me to make amends. I was probably at fault. So we agreed to go up together to a local pub and have a drink, watch the end of a football game together. And at the end of the game, I went to the restroom and I didn't make it back to the table. On my way back, I literally fell over dead. My heart stopped instantly. Louise didn't know where I'd gone. There was a commotion in the pub, obviously.
So you were just like, you collapsed on the floor?
Just collapsed. There's no warning, no symptoms, nothing at all to indicate there was anything wrong with me or anything like this might happen. And I was the luckiest man in the world at that moment in time, because I collapsed in front of a table that included a trainee doctor, so somebody learning to become a doctor in medical school, and an emergency services volunteer here in Australia. So 2 people very well trained in CPR, and I fell at their feet. And
wow,
they worked on me straight away. They got the clock started and literally timed how long I was out. I'm very lucky being here in the middle of Sydney. We're very close to great hospitals. So within 5 minutes of me collapsing with no pulse, the ambulance was on site. And on the 6th minute, they got the paddles on me and my heart restarted.
Wow. So the ambulance got them. Where's Louise?
So I can't remember any of this.
Yeah.
So everything I'm telling you is secondhand and third hand. So Louise went over to the crowd and could see me there on the ground. And
She had
said,
no idea it was you.
No, not initially, no. And what was incredibly terrifying for Louise was she saw it was me, obviously, but I had gone like a bluey purple immediately. And some people, she'd said, "Oh, that's Chris, that's my husband." And as she got to the scene, the ambulance crew arrived about a moment later, and one of the ambulance volunteers took her out and said, "Look, you probably don't want to be in there right now, and you should be prepared for the worst. It's unlikely Chris will survive this."
Oh, wow.
And that started maybe starts the wrong word. That brought into focus a period of transformation that had been slowly happening in the years preceding, and really brought it to a sharp point for me. And you know what's interesting, and I've learnt since, with the help of lots of therapy, that what I displayed in the months afterwards were clear and obvious signs of PTSD, which I didn't recognize at the time. And that represented itself in a belief that I had to get back to work straight away. I was 5 days in ICU, and it was COVID at the time. It was Sydney's second lockdown, the start of it. And so they didn't want to keep people in hospital. So after 5 days in ECU, they sent me home. that because of, I think, my conditioning as an exec in the tech industry, because of the way I'm built, because of my own insecurities as well, I've since learned, on day 6, I was reading emails. Day 7, I was attending calls. And within no time, I was working at full capacity, subconsciously trying to pretend that nothing had happened. And
I guess this just moving into this new big house with your 2 girls, there's also the weight of the responsibility as the breadwinner to like keep that and show up at work, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And I was in the early part, 5 or 6 months into this new role. With COVID at the time, it's hard to imagine it now, we think of it now, but at the time we really did not know what was going to happen. And so the redundancy measures we were taking at work, the restructuring, the refocus of priorities was intense. And as a new executive in the organization who had never met their team in person, because we were all remotely, I was feeling the pressure. And with that pressure, I've since learned that pressure is often a reflection of insecurity. And insecurity's okay as long as you're aware of it. And I felt enormous pressure, an enormous responsibility of my daughters and my wife. They had and continue to support me in my career, and I just had this deep desire to provide stability for them.
Yeah.
This was going to be it. This was going to be the final move. And there's a whole lot I found out in life that you just can't control, no matter how much you try. And so things changed for me significantly. I worked harder than I've probably ever worked in the aftermath.
Oh yeah, like you were saying, like you feel like the superhuman suddenly.
You feel
After going through something like that was crazy when you said that.
it's like, well, I've survived this.
Yeah.
I'm fine. And in my mind, in my PTSD, I felt what I recognize now is really vulnerable at work and a need to show up. I was feeling insecure. I wanted to get it done. And I pushed myself harder, despite the wonderful support that the organization offered me that I was working for. And I do need to say that. I was my own worst enemy. They told me from day one, take time, Chris. It'll be fine. The world's not going to fall apart. Come back when you feel ready. But I chose to go back, and I worked harder. And I also escalated some pretty bad habits. I've always been, not always been, but I've worked hard. I've celebrated hard. I've been a consistent consumer of alcohol. I drank heavily. I mean, let's call it. I drank heavily for a long time as a part of my persona.
Yeah.
And strangely, because as you know, I don't drink now. And so everybody goes, oh, wow, so you had this near-death experience and then thought you better take care of yourself. No. I had this near-death experience and thought I was indestructible. I worked harder, drank harder. And it was through counseling, through therapy, and through some really wonderful conversations with my boss, the CEO at the time, that made me realize I actually wasn't okay and my behavior wasn't normal. And while my physical health came back quite quickly, what I didn't pick up was the damage done to my mental health in the process. And another day-to-day example that people often ask, and gosh, if you spoke to Louise, what's Chris like in the front seat of a car now? I've got better. But in the months after the accident, I couldn't drive for 6 months by law here in New South Wales after you've had a heart episode where your heart stopped.
Okay.
Because they're not sure if it's going to happen again. So for 6 months I was a passenger.
Right.
And I just saw death and accidents everywhere. Like I was just terrified. Louise is a wonderful, safe driver, and I was terrified, and it was a nightmare. And so that was another way that this PTSD expressed itself. And it's about nine months after it happened, I made the decision, strongly supported by my boss. And my boss, a few months before then, had said, the CEO, hey Chris, I think you need to take an extended time out, and that's okay. I said, no, I've got this. Don't you worry, I've got it, I'm fine. And it was a few months later, I went back and said, hey, that conversation that we had, I think you're right, I need an extended time. and it needs to be really extended. I can't make a commitment to when I'm coming back. And so we worked on an exit, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to pay for the house. I didn't know how I was going to maintain my commitments to my family. And I don't think I'm alone in when I say that in my mind I justified a lot of the hard work that I did, a lot of the absence from family, a lot of the travel.
Yeah.
I justified in that by telling myself I was providing for them.
Yeah.
I never asked them if that's the role they wanted me to play, by the way. I just assumed that was the role.
Yeah.
And
what was it that was the tipping point for you to go like, actually maybe he's right, like you're CEO, and I need to go back and have this conversation again and leave this career, which I think is very scary to do that. Like,
wow, there's so many things that contributed to that moment. You use the term Careerquake, and that's what I was having for a long time, right? That it really accelerated. And there was a few things, a few telltale signs to me. I was proud of my ability to stay emotionally stable in crises at work. I was proud of my ability to believe at least I was putting the needs of my team first and taking the time to understand how they were being impacted by change around them. And what I found and started realizing was that I was not able to be that emotionally consistent and stable. I was making decisions that weren't data-based, that weren't consultative.
And how were you aware that you weren't doing that? Like, did somebody tell you? Did you realize it yourself, or?
I think most people know when they're not performing at their best.
Okay, yeah.
But often, and this is the case, it takes somebody else to notice it for you to realize that you can't cover it up any longer. And my CEO, my HR partner, I mean, we were working so closely together on a reimagination of the whole sales org that they were like, Chris, you all right? And I guess my behavior at times just wasn't appropriate. I was angry at moments where anger wasn't the right emotion. I was teary at moments when tears weren't the right emotion.
Okay.
And I was making decisions when normally they would have expected me to run the idea past them and go, hey, what do you think?
Right.
And so it was a deep inner knowing, but not being able to necessarily realize it, combined with some great leadership around me and support, which made me realize it. But that phone call that I made that led to me leaving the business was, to that point in time, the most frightening phone call I'd ever made.
Yeah.
Because I had no plans.
I know. It's like, it's so scary when I had to do that, like announce, don't ever call me again. Right? We tie so much of our identity to the work that we do. And then there is no next job to announce on LinkedIn, right?
I can safely say now, and without any sort of fear at all, that what I went through was a breakdown of sorts. And I think it's totally understandable. And if I sit back and if I saw this happening to a colleague of mine, I hope I'd recognize it, and I hope I'd support them the way I was supported. I never felt pressure to leave. I didn't feel pressure to stay. I was given the opportunity to work through it myself, which was wonderful and I think rare. But it was still incredibly frightening because I left not knowing what I was going to do, not knowing how I was going to support my girls, not knowing how I was going to keep them in this house. And still, at that stage, placing too much emphasis on finding happiness through material success. And that's been one of my biggest learnings coming through this. You know, what's really interesting is I expected my daughters to be a bit upset. They were young. They were obviously upset about what happened to me, but just a bit unsettled by the changes we've had to make in our day-to-day lifestyle. They were in their mid and late teens at the time. And if I reflect upon myself at that age, it was all about me, you know? I mean, you're young, they're finding themselves, and if you're ever entitled to be selfish, I think it's in those years,
Yeah.
sort of 16 to 20. And it was one of my biggest concerns in one of our many conversations. And what's worked for us as a family has been to be really open about it. So I've told them everything. I've told them about my abuse of alcohol. I've told them about my mental fragility. I've told them about not having a plan and being scared.
Yeah.
And what's been amazing is what I've realized in talking to my girls, that they don't remember the gifts I've given them. Yeah, they don't remember the things that I did to compensate for me being absent working so much. What they remember is all the time we spent together. They remember the vacations. They remember playing around in the yards, playing games with them, whatever it might be. That's what they remember.
Yeah.
And even now, what are we, over 4 years, 4.5 years down the track, they've never mentioned, oh, I wish we could do that. I wish we could do this. I miss that. I won't lie. We're giving up the house, yeah, which is huge, because I've moved them, as is often the case in this career. I've moved them so many times, and this was going to be the last move. And that's been a really big thing for us to work through as a family. And their concern is not we might be moving to a house that's not quite as nice or anything like that. It's just they want their roots to be preserved in the area. So that's our focus, to stay in the area.
Yeah.
But I think when I reflect on my career, I had many great experiences in the tech industry. I've seen the world. I've met some wonderful people. But if I'm truly honest now, I know that I never felt totally happy within myself with that work. I didn't feel though it was my purpose, it was my calling. It was terrific.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that I worked with who I think are doing it because they do feel it is their purpose and calling. But for me, it wasn't. And it took this major event in my life for me to start a process for me to find the courage to make the changes. And so I was walking through a park, not this park, but one not far away at all, and I saw a food van, and they were serving food to people in need. And I gave them a call and started volunteering, which led to a job. And so I've gone from thinking that I'm, this really impressive senior executive to engaging with people in need every single day, and perhaps being the 5 minutes of their day where somebody treats them like a human being. And that got more satisfaction out of that than I did in most of my career.
And how much were you paid again? Like, what was the percentage of pay cut did you take?
It was like a 80% pay cut. Literally an 80% pay cut.
Yeah.
And through that, I realized that it's funny, people talk about selfishness in a bad way sometimes. But I've learned to view selfishness as a means to being useful and of service to others, right? So my selfish moment was realizing I need to put myself first and continue focusing in an area which made me feel good about myself.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I could turn up better for my family. I could sleep easier at night. I could take care of my health. And I could build a whole new career. And it's headed in directions that I would have never have imagined. So I ended up working with a beautiful, beautiful person. She was a prison officer for 35 years. So tough as nails on the outside, absolute heart of gold on the inside. And she said to me, she goes, Chris, you engage really well with a lot of these people that quite honestly, most of society just turns her eye to. And she wanted me to go and work with her in the prisons. And honestly, for me, that was a bridge too far.
Yeah.
But it got me on a path of looking into ways I could work with people in need of help and connection, and ended up working in Sydney as a community corrections officer.
Oh, what's that?
Which is, in old speak, people would kind of understand the term parole officer.
Okay. Oh, okay.
But I tend to not work with clients who are in custody awaiting release, the focus of my work has been with clients who have been released on community-based orders. So the goal is to try and keep the community safe. That's number one priority, is always decisions based upon community safety, but working with clients to help address their risk factors in the community so they can go on and live positive pro-social lives.
Okay. And these clients, like, what are their profiles? What have they done, like, just to give people an idea?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything on the spectrum. I have not worked with a murderer yet, but I've worked with people convicted of manslaughter, offences against children, a lot of drug-related offences, a lot of violence, white-collar crime.
Yeah.
And people say to me, what's that like? Oh, it must be terrible working with all those bad people. It must really, how do you find happiness in that? And what I've discovered, conversely, is what I've learned is there are very few people that I've met who I would describe as inherently bad.
Yeah.
And behind every bad action, there's normally a set of events,
Bad things happen
trauma,
to them.
circumstances. Yeah, I've heard people use the phrase broken people break people. And that, in the vast majority of instances, is the case. And
Yeah.
so finding this balance of community safety at foremost, but also engaging with people who have committed some pretty terrible offenses, engaging with them as humans, because unless you connect, you can't drive change. And that's been the focus of my work. So I work with the clients when they're in court. And most recently, I've been working on a project called the Wallimer List, which is a pre-sentencing court process here in Sydney to provide a more culturally appropriate and sensitive forum for our First Nations, so Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, to find justice in the process.
And that's because, although they make up 3% of the population.
Correct. 3% of the population, and they represent 30% of the prison population. So something hasn't worked, and it hasn't worked for a long time to have that overrepresentation. And we're piloting a number of initiatives within state government to try and close that gap and to try and ensure that the justice system meets the needs of everybody in a fair, compassionate way, whilst improving community safety. It's complicated. It's complicated work, but it's incredibly rewarding. And going back to that thing, selfish, that makes me feel good inside. And helping others makes me feel good. And so if you find your selfishness in the right way, if you connect selfishness with purpose, I think it can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah. So what's next for Chris? Like, career-wise? Like, have you figured out what you want to do when you grow up?
Well, one thing I've learned is that when you find something that you're passionate about, my mind has shifted from working hard to some point in time where I retire,
Yeah.
to doing something constructive every day, because it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
It's the purpose of life. So I don't see myself ever wanting to retire to the golf course or anything like that. I see myself in this line of work helping others, because helping others helps me.
Yeah.
And it could lead in many different directions. Wonderful thing about working within the justice system in New South Wales, within state government, is the opportunities are endless. And so I'm not sure how it'll end. I do find that in some respects, my emotional intelligence is growing and being worked incredibly hard every day. But I think there could be a role out there which I've yet to identify, which might also better leverage my intellectual capacity. So, I don't know, strategy, policy. It's hard because I was a sales director, and
Yeah.
as a sales director, the days I liked the most were the days when I was seeing customers
Yeah.
with my sales team.
Yeah.
The days I enjoyed least was when I was in an office or a boardroom
Yeah.
doing planning and strategy and business work. So
Yeah.
whatever I do, I want to ensure that I have the opportunity to engage with my clients. That's important to me.
One of the things I struggled the most with after leaving corporate is my relationship with money. Like, how much is enough?
Yeah. Well, I've lost a lot of sleep on that, and there's no number. And I also can't deny that I'm in a pretty lucky position.
Yeah.
I had a career for more than 20 years that paid very well.
Yeah.
And so what I did realize was something that I told a friend of mine who went through an experience, and I forgot that I told him. So he reminded me of apparently a moment of wisdom which had completely passed me by. And he was in a similar position to me. He had left a very successful career. He was facing financial problems. He was incredibly worried. And so I spent some time with him, and we worked through very quickly, high level, what his financial position was. And I said, hey, you know what? You're never going to be in a position where you don't have a roof over your head. You're never going to be in a position where you don't have food in the fridge. And I know your family, you're never going to be in a position where you don't have people who love you. So you've got enough. And he threw that back at me. And when I'm at my best, I feel like I've got enough. And that's enough.
Yeah.
And I've learned that a lot of the material excess, which I demonstrated for a long time, was me trying to buy myself short periods of happiness, right? It was hits of happiness. And that was probably because I wasn't necessarily doing what I should be doing with myself and my life. Now that I'm happier for most of the time, I'm a human. And happiness isn't a target of mine, because happiness is an emotion. It's a fleeting emotion.
Yeah.
Contentment, I think, is more of a target state for me. And with that contentment, I find that generally speaking, I want for a little bit less. Now, do I have days where I'm envious of those that seem to have more than me? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do I have days where my pride gets in the way, my ego gets in the way of myself and my own progression as a person? Absolutely, totally. But I've got people that help me. I've sought therapy. As a family, we've sought therapy. I gave up alcohol 3.5 years ago because I knew that was something that wasn't doing me any good. It was feeding the ego, the insecurities, the depression, the lack of sleep, the emotional instability. And I stopped that, and I got help to stop that. And although it wasn't easy, that in itself is following changing career and taking time out. That change around the alcohol was probably the most significant one for me, because it helped me get to my true self, which I'd hidden. I'd hidden with ego, pride, alcohol and money, my true self. And once I managed to work through that, I've just found a level of contentment that I didn't have before. And that's been interesting in itself. That's a journey. And people will say to me, hey, geez, Chris, what's it like giving up alcohol? And because here in Sydney, or in Australia, and I know we're not alone, and especially with men,
Yes.
alcohol is the way we communicate. And if I looked at my friends and colleagues, everything was, let's catch up for a drink. Let's watch some sport and have a drink. Let's go for dinner and have a drink. And undoing that has been difficult. And for a while, for me, it meant withdrawing from that type of engagement until I felt strong enough to go and engage socially without that support. And for me, what I learned was that alcohol was a support. I'm a naturally uncomfortable person in crowds.
Yeah.
And my career necessitated, I felt it. I can't blame the career. I just need to blame the way I handled it, right? Was I felt that I needed that alcohol to feel comfortable in those surroundings and to be the person that I thought everybody else wanted to see. Of course, that couldn't be further from the truth. But I have had some friends and colleagues drift away. for sure.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Yeah. You were saying like you ask your friends now for breakfast and they go, what do you mean? Like, let's grab a beer.
Yeah, because there are. And the great thing is, geez, I'm not alone on this path towards sobriety.
Yeah.
And the idea of catching up with a buddy for a coffee or for breakfast is nowhere near as alien now or unlikely now as it was and not that long ago.
Yeah.
But I do have friends that struggle to do it because I see in them what I saw in myself.
Yeah.
And that's their own struggle to be relaxed and to be confident in themselves without some kind of helping hand. But hopefully I'm here for people that are in that situation who want to learn about what I did, how I went about it. I've had some friends talk to me about it, and I've also met a whole bunch of new people, which is exciting, right?
Yeah.
I tell you what, as a 52-year-old person, it can be hard to find new friends. When your kids have gone through that schooling years and those natural points where you make new relationships have sort of surpassed. But for me, at least, one of the real benefits of taking this new approach to my life was I've met a whole bunch of people who are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so you build new circles of friends.
Yeah.
And they're complemented by some of your old circle.
Yes.
And it is a bit of a filter process. You do find out how many of those old friends are truly connected to you.
Yes. Yes. Who still picks up the phone? Who wants to stay in touch with you? Who do you want to call when you visit a city, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, like there's a lot of people in Sydney. There's very few that I called.
I know. And I was so happy to get the call, like genuinely so happy. And I'm so glad you called me.
Yeah, I want to talk about therapy.
Yeah.
And especially men going to therapy. What made you decide that you would go? Is this your first time going to therapy when this incident happened?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
So it would have been around 2012. My wife had some really serious medical issues. She had breast cancer. I, at that point in time, had just started what I thought was the biggest and best job and was working really hard. And we'd moved away from home. I was traveling a lot. And I was too embarrassed to admit it then. But, you know, I look back on it now and, I had a breakdown. I was working hard. The person I loved most was really sick and we didn't know how that was going to end up. My kids were unsettled. And so my first taste of experience with therapy would have been around 2012, 2013 for a little while.
Yeah.
So I knew it could help. And then following the cardiac arrest, when I realized that my emotions they just weren't stable. I didn't know who I was and I didn't know why I was behaving the way I was behaving. I guess I had that experience to call upon. And I went and re-engaged with a psychologist and a psychiatrist again. I went away for a month to a retreat and had a lot of intensive work done there, both spiritual and traditional counseling. And for me, it really helped. And it can be hard as a guy. Well, I can't say it was hard for me to open up and be vulnerable, and I was resistant.
Yeah.
And I probably burnt through a couple of counselors. And I remember one night coming home to Louise and saying, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
What is? I'm just paying for somebody to be my friend. No, I'm not doing that. What do they know?
And you probably watched like your dad or other male role models growing up. They didn't do that, right?
No.
They just sucked it up, maybe?
They just sucked it up.
Yeah.
But also what I've learned as I've got older and my parents have got older and my grandparents who have now all passed. But as a family, we've got a lot better at opening up about things that might have impacted us as individuals in the past. And so now, maybe it's because I've been able to open up and be vulnerable with my mum and dad.
Yeah.
They've opened up with me about some of the challenges they faced in their life.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's helped them.
Yeah.
And not that my dad has sought counseling, but a lot of people in my family have. And it's funny, for physical health, what do? We hire trainers. We go to the gym.
Yeah,
we put a
exactly.
program in place.
Yeah.
We're disciplined. For our mental health,
Yep.
if we can get away with it, we'll do nothing.
Yeah. I know. It's so illogical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, on the one hand, I'd say, and a lot of the people that I work with now in my current, a lot of them come from backgrounds of trauma,
Yeah.
of disadvantage, of alcohol and drug issues, challenges. And so a lot of my work with them is based upon cognitive behavioral therapy, but I'm not an expert. I'm more like a triage person in that respect, and connect them with people that can really help them. And so the conversation around, do I need to see a therapist and what do I get out of therapy, is a conversation I have almost every day. And I encourage everybody, because you don't know. You
Yeah.
actually, for me, I was the last person probably in my sphere, in my family, and amongst my closest work colleagues, I was the last person that realized my mental health
Right.
wasn't where it should have been. And when I said to my wife, oh, I'm going to go and get some help, she was like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like, not thank you, you idiot, but thank you with probably a bit of you idiot, but
Yeah.
with real compassion, because she
Yes.
didn't know how to raise it with me. She knew I was vulnerable. And
Yes. Also, I think it's hard, like with, especially with the people you love, when you know they need help, it actually makes no difference to tell them to go do it if they themselves aren't ready to do it or don't see the need to do it, right?
Yeah.
And it's the hardest thing to just watch, like someone you love like that. But that's also just the ability to hold space, which
Yeah.
I think Louise did for you. And to
she
just
held a
allow
lot of
you.
space
Yeah.
and was just so patient with me. So patient. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't have got this far without her. And so having people around me that loved me and were prepared to give me that space was critical. And it's interesting, what worked for me hails back to some of the stuff you and I used to talk a lot about in our sales careers in technology. Open questions.
Oh, yeah.
Don't tell somebody they need to go to
Yeah.
therapy.
Yes.
Ask them how they're feeling, what
Yeah.
kind of help. And so that's the conversations that I have. How do you feel about that? What kind of help do you think could be beneficial? Explain trauma-informed care. Explain different approaches to abstaining from alcohol or drugs. Yeah. Explain and ask open questions and don't tell.
Yeah.
And that's what worked for me. So it's interesting because people now in my current job will often say, what? So you were some techie thing. The first thing they say is, can you fix my laptop or my phone?
Yes.
No, I can't.
Yes.
The second thing they say is, what are you doing in this corrective services,
Yeah.
social welfare type
Yeah.
support? What
Like
are you
you gave all of that up for
how, you know,
what?
how can you do, and what I found is so many similarities, right? Because even as a sales leader, I always found and tried to coach that you didn't have to sell if you just asked open questions and identified their need. And when you're dealing with people going through some of the hardest parts of their lives, asking open questions and listening to
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
it's actually the same skill set.
Yeah. So for anyone out there that's going through their own Careerquake and reinvention journey, like what would you say to them on the things that they can start with that is small enough, it's easy enough to do, that they can start thinking about?
Look, the first thing I would do, if you've started recognizing this feeling inside of yourself that you might not be doing, you might have not pursued a career that's giving you the fulfillment that you sought, is take time out to reflect upon what you're grateful for, because that will really help you identify what's important to you. Get therapy.
Yeah. I
Get
think
therapy.
like that's the thing that, like, people say, oh, what's the one thing you'd change, right? If you go back 20 years, I think I would go to therapy much earlier.
Yeah.
That's one thing I would change.
Who make great career coaches? Therapists. And going back to one of your questions at the beginning, or comments around, well, how much is enough? Because that money thing it's an appeal and an attraction and a fear that we all have. Don't try and be logical about it, because contentment has no connection with material wealth. Contentment is all about feeling connected to the people and the place around you, your environment. And if you've got that connection, if you've got a roof over your head, if you've got food in your belly, if you've got people who love you, then you've really ticked off most of the key pillars to a quality life, I think. Don't be shy of wanting to make money and experience things and live a more comfortable life.
Yeah.
That's what money does. Money certainly brings comfort.
Yeah.
But
We love money, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Of course. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But it's also about understanding why you love it.
Yeah.
And not building your whole, for me anyway, my whole persona around it.
Yeah.
It buys me moments worth of enjoyment, not a lifetime of contentment.
And for all the work that you are doing for the community here in New South Wales, in Sydney, Australia, is there anything that you want, any specific messages that you feel is important that you want to share out?
Look, there's a couple of things. A really practical one, which I found out by moving from the tech industry into government, was in the tech industry we were focused, and I think we were authentically focused on building diversity in the workplace. But it was a slow process because the tech industry legacy nature of the organizations I worked for meant that you were having to correct an imbalance over the course of time, and that was hard. And so that part of my career didn't give me working experience of the value of diversity in the workplace. Moving into New South Wales state government, diversity is a given.
Wow, yeah.
And they've worked hard for it for a long time.
Yeah.
But I work in an environment that's embraced diversity in all of its facets. It's not just gender diversity, it's age diversity, it's cultural diversity, it's diversity of abilities and experiences. And what I've seen is that brings out the best in people. It brings out the collective creativity of the organization. If you have an organization that was dominated by a certain person culture, by men, let's be honest, 70-80% men that are all striving for success, that's not an environment that's conducive for creative lateral thinking. It just isn't, right?
But these are all the things that we would say typically, right? Like, we know this to be true. What you're saying is actually, now I'm in that environment that we've always talked about. And so you are experiencing that difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love that my colleagues, my peers, people in their mid-20s to people in their 60s, all sorts of backgrounds. And it's provided me with so much growth because you're communicating and engaging with people whose lives are so different and varied. But also it increases the collective intelligence of the organization. Right? And that's what I love about my work environment. I learn as much from my 23-year-old colleagues who think, who is this old dude? Like, what's he doing? As I do from people who have spent 20 or 30 years in the department.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I would encourage people to embrace. The other, I guess, message for people that might listen is, I said seek therapy.
Yeah.
Everybody should have it, even if you don't think you need it. It's just training for your brain. It's exercise for your brain. And connect with people around you. Funny, when I work with people and my own journey with alcohol, connecting with others and doing something of use for somebody else brings such a great sense of fulfillment
Yeah.
and connection. And I've said that word connection many times over the course of this conversation. It can be lonely being a leader in business.
Oh, yeah.
And it can be difficult to know how much you share and who you share it with.
Yes.
And if you can't do that in your work environment for some reason, you do have an opportunity to drive change in that space by showing your vulnerability. But if that's a bit too hard for you at this point in time, do it outside of work.
Yeah.
Find connection.
Yeah.
Help somebody. Help your neighbor.
Volunteer.
Volunteer.
Yep.
Give back. Because it'll help address that little hole that you might have in your soul. So,
Yeah. So fill your cup
yeah,
every day. Yeah.
absolutely.
Chris, thank you. It's the first time you're sharing your story, so I appreciate that you trusted me with that, and I'm deeply grateful that we got a chance to
Thank you.
capture this for so many people that will listen to this conversation, and I am very sure will take away a lot for themselves. So they might be pinging you on, I don't know, whatever platforms you're still on.
Yeah, I'm on most of them.
Yes. We'll drop Chris's details on the link below, but this has been Raw with Uma. If you enjoyed this conversation or found anything useful in it, please share it with a friend, and please hit like on YouTube and subscribe, and we'll see you again on the next one.